There's nobody here yet, but welcome to RPG Hour interviews. I'm going to give us just a second before we get started. I'm going to go over to the tweet box and let people know that we are live.
Oh, talking on the bird app.
I was actually typing out Twitter on Twitter in the
Nice.
oh,
Gotta love it.
it has been a day. Let me just say I was ready to get in a fight with a customer. Uh,
I I wish I could say I understand, but I kind of took today off. Like I worked like hell yesterday on Ether related things and just decided to not today.
all right, tagging you like that. And going over here and
Hey, there we go.
mobile dashboard. I do have to say I do like the mobile dashboard. The only thing that I don't like is I for some reason forgot my password to Twitch, and I had to do that today. So I am now having to relog into everything, and it is not fun.
It's a pain. I've done that multiple times.
I have a love hate relationship with the security. So, those of you out there that are wondering why I go on rants about how we don't actually need all the levels of security that we do, um, I do have a background in technology, actually. I used to do system administration stuff, computer repair, and some computer programming. And I am very much a pro Linux person if I could find some alternatives to desktop publishing, because that's the real reason I am held back. I can do video and audio editing on Linux. I can't do desktop publishing. And I can even game on Linux.
Desktop publishing is a weirdly niche thing for some reason at this point, and I don't know why. I think it's just because the program side of things hasn't caught up to the fact that there's a bustling self-publishing market now, so they haven't realized that there's like actually kind of a market for that type of software for people, especially on Linux.
Which is weird because Linux is all about like the freedom, and I don't know, it just baffles me.
Mm-hmm. Ooh,
I like background
that's
music.
fun. That's fun.
Um, so this is tabletop audio for those of you who are joining us. I am using tabletop audio as background soundtrack today. And does it? Oh, awesome! Yes, that does not make it disappear. So kind of catching up on things. I am RPG Hour, and this is Eldritch Crow, and we are discussing um, their role as a part of RPG Hour. Um,
Yeah. Hi, I'm Eldritch Crow. I use he, him pronouns, and we're doing 3 shows together now. And I think in chronological order, too, those would be Star Wars, Routes Unknown, and Beacons as well, in terms of like order of release.
your own show that used.
Yeah.
What's your monthly?
Um, well, no, I was trying to figure out what order we released them in.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. Ironically, that's how it favored out. I was just gonna do that order because oh, Crow is really loud. All right, let's turn Crow down a little bit.
I also
Um,
tweaked myself down a little bit here, too, when I saw that. So hopefully that takes away the echo from my end.
Hopefully that was a success. Ha.
I've been having an absolute mess of tech issues over here, so probably my fault.
um. So sorry. I think I'm having a tech issue. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Oh yeah,
Okay, cool. Um, so my Streamlabs OBS is completely frozen on my end. Nothing is moving or anything like that. So, uh, yeah. Um,
I I got Twitch pulled up. We're still good.
I'm surprised we only have one person in though. But have. Whoa, no. What the heck is going on? That's not supposed to happen. There we go. That was a. I flashed for a second and everything. I had capabilities again. So we had been mutuals for a tiny bit, and then I managed to convince you, along with a few others, to come and play a game for my birthday. Not recorded, not streamed, nothing. Um, and
That's
we
always a funny
made
story.
a bit of a gonzo Star Wars story based on a campaign that I've run off and on for years. Um, what interested you in an ongoing campaign about Star Wars Legacies?
Um, well, frankly, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. That's kind of what got me into it in the first place. And at the same time, I was starved for being a player in TTRPGs at that point because it had been a couple months since I'd stopped playing D&D, and unfortunately, the only group I was a part of at the time only played D&D, or groups, I should say. I was still part of a streamed game by that point. I think. Eh, time is weird. It's fine. But yeah, I was missing out on playing, and I had never touched a D6 based system outside of like a single PBTA game once in a while. So, it was an opening, and it was a chance for me to play in one of my favorite kind of IPs, I guess we could say, and just mess around and have fun. So,
So, having played the system for a little while, what do you think about a D6 dice pool system like what Weston Games or Star Wars D6 uses?
um, hmm. If we're gonna go like full design brain here, I like I like how easy it is to get into. I like accessibility for materials wise, like D6s in a brick, super easy to come by. I like the fact that D6 systems are all pretty well established, so it's not really once you've tried one, you've tried them all scenario, but it's like once you've tried one, you can pick up others very, very quickly, which I like. So coming from, once or twice playing a PBTA game to trying out Star Wars D6, even though there were different mechanics and different ways to use the dice, it wasn't such a stretch as to be uncomfortable. It was actually very, very quick to pick up for me. That's about it. I I do still have some gripes. I do still feel like there is yet to be a system that does force powers well, but that's also more of a gripe with the Star Wars IP as a whole, not making force powers make any kind of sense in any way, shape, or form, at least on a mechanical level. So taking something that is very, very like soft magic and its rules changed to suit the story that's being told and trying to make that into a game system is difficult. And I don't envy the people that attempt it at all.
I do still have a surprise on that side of things. I've got um, how do I put this? I have a document that steals a psychic based power system from another science fiction game and ports that over to use with Star Wars D6. And so, technically speaking, there's not a whole lot of people that are going to directly benefit from that in the game. Actually, no. Half the group is going to benefit from it, technically speaking, because even you will benefit from it in your way. So
Yeah,
we will be doing something a little bit different. I do agree. I don't think that there has ever been really a good way of doing force powers. I do think it's one of those things that it's. I don't think force powers fit with Star Wars technically because they're more gonzo than like the seriousness of the setting.
I so I got to watch our mutual friend Sin playing a Ross Rifles game last night. I got to pick up that stream, and I realized like a playbooks based powered by the apocalypse mode might be the way to do it because I feel like force powers are a thing. The more I get into the design space, I feel like force powers are a thing where they are narratively anchored more than they are mechanically anchored because they're literally you do what you need to do in the moment to get things done more often than not. So, especially if you're looking at like the extended universe stuff, but we don't have to go into that whole conversation. But I feel like, especially with the idea of like Sith and Jedi and all this stuff, having a playbooks narrative based system for Star Wars would probably function extremely well. But who knows? I'm just a fledgling.
I will say, the the system that I'm taking from fits how I see force powers more, and I think that force powers need to be done more in a way that is general skill use rather than individual skill use, like they're oftentimes done. And so I'm using a version that has broken it down into 7 different categories, um, and technically 8 categories. If you've got a specialty power like Battle Mind, or if you're only a Force sensitive, you've got one simple thing that you do, or a small set of things. That would be your simple little thing, rather than trying to get all these different categories. So technically, I've separated it that, and I'm hoping that that works well for y'all. I have a feeling for your characters could be a lot easier because you don't have to worry about all those extra points going towards force on occasion. Um, oh, and we do have a
Yeah.
quick break to say, mini RPG, look down at your food, pick up your fork, and eat some bites. Um, so Star Wars Legacies, you kind of know the direction that it's going. We've got 2 segments that are coming up. One of them is y'all getting to work with Gungans, and the other one is
Such a good.
the other one is that y'all are we're going to have a guest game master or game runner. Force guide is the term that I use. I don't remember what the um, old style actually used. It's like I've read the West End Games version, I've read this version multiple times, and I don't know which one it actually is. Um, but West End Games was the original creator, and now this is a fan thing that we are playing. For those of you that haven't seen or haven't listened to that show, it's a podcast only. But West End Games, I just noticed that it's doing a whole different thing. Um, West End Games is a defunct company that did the original Star Wars D6. We're using a fan based one that actually does something that updates the rules a little bit more, and I am hoping that we're going to update them a little bit on our side. I'll put those fan rules out available on the website at some point. Um, but sorry, back to the point that I ventured off there. So we've got 2 sub stories that are about to happen. One of the characters is going to take over as Force Guide for a little bit, and they are going to run a subset based on your character in a way. And the other one is this side story that y'all have bungled into,
With
where
Morgans,
with some Gungans.
none of which are Sith Lords, hopefully. Um,
uh, with that direction and the overall direction of everything that is taking, are you excited for either of those? Are you excited for the overall? What are the things you're looking forward to?
I'm okay. So blanket, I'm just gonna say I'm always excited to play in Star Wars Legacies because the Runt is actually a character who's very far outside of what I normally play. Normally, I play the thinkers, I play the planners, I play the character who tries to find weird solutions to things. And in Star Wars Legacies, for those that have possibly listened to the show, I play a character who just specializes in blowing things up, and usually in spectacular ways. And so getting the chance to, like, on the one hand, play this character whose personality is very far outside of what I'm used to, but also getting the chance to, like, step into potentially a bit of backstory, a bit of character building for them in the upcoming sort of uh, horse guide trade off is really exciting to me. I also I'm also one of those people where the most fascinating stories for me that come out of Star Wars are always the ones about people who don't have force powers or who have very limited ones. So having a entire story about what will probably be a squad of, slightly extrasensory clone troopers is something that's right up my alley, and I'm super excited for it. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty hyped about that. Also, I just when it comes to the other things, Runt is kind of just along for the ride and is like, okay, so there's Gungans now. Great. Sure. Why not? What can I shoot next?
So you weren't a part of the Halloween segment where they ended up, spoiler alert, where they ended up inside of a Sith temple. And so you are for potentially going to be going into this situation that you haven't really interacted with before. Um, are there any concerns that you have with going into that type of situation?
Um, yes, but also no, because knowing what I know about the Star Wars universe, like on occasion when you walk into a Sith temple, there are things like random possessions, there are things like people try to speak to you in your head. Everything tries to coax you into being the worst possible you possible. That is what these places exist to do. I, on the one hand, feel like that could be really bad for Runt. On the other hand, I also feel like it just might not work on him because he's he's very single-minded, and that's okay. And it might be his best strength at this point. So no, I'm not really worried about that stuff. Not at all. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. It's also going to be interesting to see Runt get sort of smacked in the face with some of the more mystical elements of Star Wars because he is very much not a mystical character, despite me building him as a clone trooper with mild force powers. I've coded those very specifically to be like, oh, he's basically just got sensory abilities. He doesn't know why, he doesn't know how. He controls it via his helmet and through stimming as though he basically has ADHD. That is the basis for this character. So for him, this is going to be really strange and also potentially, maybe put him on the back burner a little bit, or on the back foot a little bit, I should say, just because there's probably not going to be a whole lot he can do about it either. Like he's really going to have to rely on other members of the party for this one because it's just going to be like, all right, can I shoot this thing? No, it's a ghost. All right, well, what the hell else do I do? And I like that. That's going to be fun. Um, I love moments like that. It's a little bit fish out of water, but I'm all for it.
So let's get on to routes unknown.
The character who is least fish out of water. You can see like how I bounce back and forth between character concepts in these two people because on the one hand, I have a man who specializes in blowing things up, and that's all he's good at. On the other hand, I have a man who specializes in shooting ghost things with a shotgun, and that's not all he's good at, but we haven't gotten to that yet.
And for those of you not aware, the routes unknown character is the one that shoots ghosts with a shotgun, and the one that blows things up is
Yes.
Runt, which I know that those could potentially be seen as almost the same exact character. So,
Yeah, pretty much. And I that wasn't intentional, but it's also kind of fun to play two characters who are very close in concept yet very different in execution. So if you go watch/listen to Routes Unknown, you'll realize like, oh, my character is constantly tired, but also is particularly good at what he does. He's got a brain in his head and he's got some skills to him, and that's about it. It's a fun time.
so with routes unknown, we almost immediately started with a little bit of danger. Um, what would you say? Or I guess I'm wording that badly. How would you say that you felt like you as you and you as your character were prepared for that initial, um, spoiler alert if you haven't already seen Routes Unknown, that initial haunted house scene?
Okay, so me as a player, absolute wimp when it comes to horror stuff. Like, you will see me flinch, you will see all of the worst reactions out of me, and I will tell you to keep going because I'm just a wimp. And like, those reactions are just me being like, ooh, no, no, thank you. But at the same time, I'm playing a character who is like, I have not had enough coffee for this, but we're doing it anyways. Let's go. And so it's this really weird split of like, all right, I gotta work to be a character, first off. And then I also have to, like, how do I put this? I have to get used to being a much more like dive in action based character, which I haven't had to play in a while. Where Runt is very much chaos incarnate for Star Wars, and I can just say, hey, I do this thing in the background and mostly get to goof off. For Chris, my character in Routes, it's very much a matter of, okay, what would he do next? And because I know he would think of these things, so all of a sudden I have to think of these things. And usually I have to think of these things while being weirded out by super tall fey creatures and expecting bodies to be hidden in freezers and all these things. So it's an interesting time. When it came to the haunted house, I I love atmosphere more than anything, and you did this fantastic build up of the atmosphere for that whole thing through the events, especially with Kelsey getting possessed. Kelsey, Kelly, I still can't
Kelsey.
remember her name. It's fine. With Kelsey getting possessed, it was just like, all right, well, guess we're gonna have an exorcism now. And it was this really fun build up. And honestly, I think part of what made it work so well is that 2 hour time slot too. Knowing we have to ramp through all these horror moments, Kelsey, uh, knowing we have to ramp through these horror movements and moments and build this atmosphere in 2 hours kind of keeps everyone on their toes and it keeps everybody contributing, which is really nice too.
So with the 2 hours time slot, there's not always going to be those scenes that are just going to fit in that 2 hours, like what is currently happening. If you haven't already caught up, go catch up. Um, and so y'all kind of stepped into a situation, um, knowing that at any point, anytime information is released into the verse, um, that oh gosh, I'm the wording on this is I don't really know how to word it. So when I write things like a spider web, but at any point any two events can be interlinked, any two people could become interlinked even if they weren't on a due course to do that before.
Mm-hmm.
But once information is put out there or an event is put out there, it's got a ticking time because it's a real life event. If it's 8 p.m. in the world and the event starts at 9 p.m. and you spend 2 hours at home gaming, you're already an hour into the event, not including drive time. Um, do you feel like that is something that is going to affect your character long term in the decisions that he makes?
I It's a little hard to tell right now because we're a bit early into it. I think the effects of that won't be known until we start seeing the consequences of potentially missing out on stuff. Um, and by missing out on things, I don't mean like, missing out on something obvious or things like that. I mean the consequences of like, oh, you've been dropping hints at this thing and we just didn't pick up on it. That sort of idea where that's a very legit GM thing to do. As a game runner myself, I've done that multiple times and I've had entire plot threads go untouched and then had things happen that weren't meant to be surprises, but it surprised the players because they didn't catch up or catch on to things the way I thought they might. So it makes for this very interesting moment of we're so early in the campaign that those things will probably definitely affect the way I play the character and the way he makes decisions. but I don't think it'll be anytime soon. I think it's going to be maybe 3 to 4 more sessions before we start to see those impacts pop up. Um, and that's just based on my general knowledge of pacing. Um, but no, I think we're going to see those changes happen via consequences more than via just the general passage of time.
I mean, it was already like, hey, this whole thing happened over here. And everybody was like, oh, cool, this thing over here. And it's like, all right, I guess. Y'all can run
Yeah,
over
like,
here. Like, all right, there's three options here. And,
I mean,
uh,
we even had a short talk after session last game where you brought up something you had told me that Chris would be aware of, and I had to warn you, like, hey, don't lock this off yet because Chris just has prioritized things in a certain order, so he hasn't brought that up yet. And that's one of those moments where it's like, all right, this is weird, but it's not potentially dangerous right now. We're going to put the potentially dangerous thing first, and that's very much the way my character works. Is like in order of priority, it's like dangerous stuff at the top, weird, but like it's not outright dangerous right now, so we can leave that for a little bit later, and then everything else. So
fun part of that is that somebody else decided to respond to that. And so somebody's already on site for that event. So that's going to
yeah,
be fun when that does come to fruition. Um, do you have a hope or goal uh, for your character in this first season?
B for Chris. Oh, that's interesting.
For having gotten really kind of you've had 4 hours in Chris now. Is there something that kind of has kind of maybe clicked? Maybe something that you're even if it's just like oh, we described this one thing, I want to go over there and check it out, or do you just kind
uh,
of want to always spend all your time in your books?
Spoilers, like mild spoilers for the ending of last episode. For those of you watching that haven't seen it, with the information he found in the place that we are, he really needs to go have a talk with his aunt. Because the minute you dropped that info, I was like, oh no, oh no. If there's one person he knows who might be in on this, well. So there was that, and then I think this is more things that I just haven't had the energy to conceptualize yet. I really want to just see what comes out, like improv and play wise, about what Chris went through in his time in the Marines and being part of their more like paranormal centered division in this universe, because that's really where stuff like his weird ability comes from and so on and so forth. But I haven't really detailed any of that out. I just left it blank because I was like, all right, let's just kind of see where this goes. And that's not usually how I build my characters, but for a Monster of the Week game that is very much like investigative paranormal stuff, I felt like it'd be a little bit fun to just leave that up to improv eventually and maybe detail that out as we go. So that's something I'd love to see play out.
So with the I've stated that for writing the behind the scenes stuff, my inspiration was stuff like Freaky Links, Supernatural, um, Twin Peaks, Haven, shows that have a very heavy supernatural theme to them in some way, shape, or form. Were any of those shows or other shows or maybe characters in literature or video games the basis for this character?
Oh boy. This character has gone through a couple of different iterations. Like I've had ideas about creating him for various fantasy games and stories and things like that. And then like he sort of just clicked into this old tired librarian with a shotgun idea, and I don't remember where that image comes from, but I know it comes from something. Oh, my own brain is betraying me right now. um but yeah, it definitely, I wanted to go with that idea of this person is absolutely more than what they seem, and what they seem is already weird as it is. Not so strange as to be like, all right, we're gonna peg this guy as absolutely from another existence, but strange enough to be like you probably wouldn't invite him over for dinner if you could avoid it. You know what I mean? It's just that thing of, oh no, he's the kid who came back a little different, and now he drives a remodeled school bus around town. It's fine. Um, and yeah, so I watched a lot of Supernatural when I was younger, and then fell off in mid-season stuff. And so I really enjoyed the concept of the show. Looking back on it, there's a lot about it that hasn't aged well by any means, but there's still that very personal idea of like, oh, there are things out there crawling in the dark, and certain people deal with those things. So I sort of just went with that mode of like, all right, so who is equal parts most and least likely to be equipped to deal with this? Being the guy who is constantly just tired from doing a bunch of odd jobs around town, but who's also like, all right, he's got enough of a background to handle this stuff if necessary. And then he's got connections like his best friend and the current cohort of people. One other thing about your last question too. One thing that like me as a player is determined to make happen in terms of party dynamics, he's absolutely going to destroy Theo in every chance he gets.
I don't think Theo. Nope, it does not look like Theo is here in chat, so that'll be a surprise. Um,
Feels
so
knows.
now on to our last show, or the last show that we're going to talk about. We're on over to Beacons of, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this again, Kelestraye.
Close enough. I pronounce it wrong sometimes too. It's fine. So yeah, Beacons is me running my Aether TTRPG that I wrote, and it's a live playtest, which is something I never thought I would wind up doing. Mainly because I never thought I'd have the guts to do it. And then things happened. We'll put it that way. But yeah, it's been really nice to jump back into the GM seat. I know, gosh, until I started running Beacons and like the week before Beacons aired, I had another game. I hadn't run a game in close to a year.
Whoo!
Yeah, I was real rusty, and I'm still real rusty. Like it used to be where like I could plan like 2 or 3 sessions in advance with just random events and things that would happen, and it would be good. Now I'm going into sessions with like max 5 bullet points of information and like not even knowing what's going on. Uh, and it's been this interesting experience of just sitting back and letting the players do most of the work, which I imagine you know quite a bit about because you do that often to us.
I
Um,
try to. I try to.
yeah, like that is actually something about my GM style I've been trying to change because I really like it in the games we play together. And so for especially for Ether, which is the system I'm learning supports cinematic gameplay really well, which wasn't super intentional, but it's a happy accident, I'll put it that way. Um it's become a bit of an experiment and also like just a really weird chance for me to try and change things up.
I will say, for a little bit of background on where I got my version of this from, was my days playing old school games. Um, a lot of the early dungeon masters that I played with, what they would do is they would set up the scene, describe everything from smells, touches. Like, if you do touch this, this is what you get. They would just describe that and then just let us go at it until we hit a combat situation. And so when I started running old school games, that's what I tried to do as well. And it's just kind of something that I tried to include. But I do have some years where I didn't do it, and I noticed that like I didn't enjoy it as much. People at the table didn't enjoy it as much. So I'm working back to that. But I will say also, I'm not also including the uh, major pitfalls at every corner. There's a trap under every nook and cranny type of thing that used to come with that as well. Um,
Yeah, it's this interesting thing. Like I I started doing a thing last session, and I explained it live on the show, where I started having the players call red or black, and I'd pull a card off the top of the deck because Aether's a card-based game, in case those watching don't know. And if they guessed right, whatever they were looking for would exist, or whatever they were asking about would happen. It was this idea of, okay, I'm not going to worry about putting danger around every corner. I'm not going to worry about, what might they try and find. I'm going to let their luck determine whether or not it exists. So, like, for example, the one thing I did last night or last episode was the sort of final strange encounter they had with a being in the woods. I believe it was Sin, call red or black. And behind the scenes, or maybe I guessed it behind the scenes, um, I used that to determine whether or not that entire little encounter with this being would happen as just a fun random event. I hadn't planned that encounter. It was just something I thought up off the top of my head in the moment, but I knew we were hitting that 2 hour mark, and I knew we were getting close to like, okay, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up on something interesting and intriguing. And so let's do this. And having the chance for the players to determine whether or not things go off is so much less stressful as a game runner. It's just so much less to juggle, really. Um, I I'm happy to just let them do their thing and cause problems. Oh no, what's going on?
I'm sorry, I'm losing it over the captions. They decided that game runner is gay brother. And
That's what I'm talking about.
um so that was not something that I was expecting today, but that is definitely something that is definitely making my day a little better. So the setting behind beacons, was that more driven by you, more driven by the players, 50-50? Did you have a idea going into it that you wanted to like kind of give them a base idea and build off of it together, or how did that come about?
um, it's a little bit of all of the above. So the general world of Araxis, which Kelestraye is a continent of, has been around for a while. It's been maybe a year and a half of me building that world, but I was building a separate continent for a home game and for a separate time period. And I built it specifically to be like, at least that continent and stuff, to be a very JRPG Sky Pirate style thing. And then we reached, Beacons starting up, and I realized that all the people that I had lined up as cast members are, fans of video games, are fans of anime, are fans of various things that all intersect with that type of tone. So I basically came up with a general tone that I wanted. I came up with a general aesthetic and like technology level, quote unquote, I guess. And then I sent out forums with a couple of different potential campaign ideas. One of them was based off of the anime Demon Slayer, which would be like, oh, hey, you're going to be dealing with monsters and problems. And what I wanted to capture from that was the tone more than anything, because in that show, yes, it's a monster slaying anime, but the main character always winds up finding some mode of compassion for the monsters at the end of the day. And that was something that I really wanted to kind of lean into. I wanted to be like, all right, you're going to have to deal with these problems. You're going to have to solve people's problems for them. But how you solve the problem potentially creates another victim, depending on how you do it. Because the way Demon Slayer works is like every demon that they slay has a backstory. And all those backstories for them becoming demons are really tragic and really horrible. And so it's this thing of like, all right, I wanted to start with that idea of showing compassion for, just people in general. I wanted to build that into Ether has its own social encounter mechanics. So I wanted to open that avenue up for the players to solve problems in different ways. And then I wanted to support all that under this veneer of, okay, this is going to be a lighter campaign. This is going to be about people being their best in a dark time. That is what this campaign is about. It is group of people who are learning to be the best they can and being as helpful as they can in some really terrible things going on. And so I handed them a couple of different campaign ideas. One of them was being part of a mercenary company. One of them was the current campaign idea, which is somewhat post-apocalyptic fantasy in a weird way. And then there were a few other things, and they all sort of blended together in certain aspects. Like I picked and chose from certain aspects to combine them and create the setting. So from that, I've also told the players that they have free reign to go create like hometowns and provinces and things like that, because I haven't really filled in the map outside the starting area. So, okay. I do on occasion do world building streams where like I've gone and made major locations. I've gone and made some settlements and stuff like that. But that's more just so that I have them in case players decide to travel. I really want players to be able to make the world their own as much as it's mine. And this is kind of the grand experiment for that. I've never done that before for my GMing, so we're just seeing how it goes. And so far, it's been going great.
I tell you that if you ever start to feel a little anxious, just create a bunch of places. Um, Simple word form, just like the name of it, kind of some things about it, like what they're well known for. What is the main form of currency that they actually use, regular currency, and then toss that at the players and be like, hey, I had some ideas, and let them like build more on it. I tell you that when I was doing this for the first time, that was what saved me from just an absolute anxiety attack, because it was definitely one of those where you're like, how much can I give away of the world that's being built?
And for me, like I've steadily reached a point where like if you ask me a question, I will reveal as many secrets as you may want to know to you as a player, but then I'll tell you, okay, but your character doesn't know this. And I will have faith in you to act like your character doesn't know these things. And it's been really interesting too, because Araxis and the kind of overarching world and setup for this campaign started as a D&D setting, and it actually started out as me intending to write it as a supplement. And then all of a sudden, I moved away from that structure, and so many things could change because of that. Like right now, I've had this very interesting concept happen now where there are two types of spirits. There are spirits of dreams and spirits of dreams and like the general world, and then there's spirits of the dead. And people can interact with one or the other of them, but they can't necessarily interact with each other. And that's mostly because of Sin as a player coming up with this concept and helping me work through it. So it's been this very interesting spin of like, all right, the underpinning structure that I was using for this setting is now gone. How weird can we make it? I'm very excited where there's multiversal gnomes now, which y'all haven't met yet, but there are multiversal gnomes in this setting, and they might play a big role depending on where the players go. We have a living plant man who is modeled after Nigel Thornberry as one of our player characters, and it's wonderful. Like it is so much video gamey, Final Fantasy inspired stuff, and I love it. It's wonderful, and most of it is just me like, all right, here are the core ideas. I set up like pantheons, and I set up like, all right, here's some general descriptions of like the types of people that live on the continent. They're entirely aesthetic, like they don't have mechanical purposes in the game. So just go for it. And it's been fun. Like some of my NPCs I've come up with on the fly, like we've had a cat-eyed lady, we've had a beetle folk, we've had gosh, so many like weird things I've just come up with off the top of my head. And it's fun. I really enjoy that stuff. And the players seem to be taking it very well. I know a few of them are in chat, so like chime in. Are you taking it well? I would hope so.
Without giving specifics, do you have any major plot points that you haven't talked to the players about yet? Anything like a villain that's going to start off as a friend, um, a mischievous person in the background that they may interact with once or twice. Do you have anything like that up the alley that the players don't know about yet?
Yeah, I plan to brutally murder Eustace.
Okay, I love it. I love it.
No, it's not gonna happen. I won't do that. Uh, mostly because I already get in shit from my off-screen group because of an NPC. I have a habit of making NPCs that people like to adopt, and then things happen, and so that's a story for another time, though. Um, but yeah, I do have some ideas of things I would like to pull in, and most of them are based off of NPCs I've created in the back of my head. Um, I've just got some interesting people that could be villains. I've got some interesting possible events that could happen. I've got like
Watching chat
wow,
finally catch up.
Chad is angry. Chad is angry. No, Eustace is safe. Generally, I've put in place this soft rule of if you tell me you don't want anything to happen to an NPC, nothing's going to happen to an NPC. And that's mostly because, like, while my home group is very trusting and will let me do basically anything to up the drama because they're like that, that doesn't function on stream. This is what happens when you go from being a game runner to being a game runner plus a showrunner is you have to put these things in place because sure, it might work among your group, but you have an audience to think about too, even if you're just getting started. And so for me, it's like if they don't want something to happen to an NPC, it's not going to happen to an NPC. Eustace is very clearly off limits going forward by consensus. Um, and so that's all well and good. I have we've been in this interesting thing where like I expected them to be back in the major town by now. I didn't expect them to do, so many interactions and so much investigating on the road last session. So we're in this interesting place where they're finding the story and sort of making it as they go. Like I'm the one having to take notes in the background because they are supposing things. They are thinking of things. They're saying like, "Oh, what if it's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea. I might want to write that down." Um, so right now, all I've got are a couple of NPCs that could be set up as adversaries. Whether they encounter them or not is up to them. I'm just gonna go ahead and come up with ideas, and you know, you'll have to not bully me into not touching Eustace. Come on, don't tempt me. Um, but yeah, it's this idea of I've got things planned, but I personally think the story that they're all going to go find and stumble themselves into is going to be way more interesting. And that's part of why I started doing the call red or black thing, because to me, having the players, make luck draws is them getting to influence the campaign. And so a great example I can give is from my home game where I started using that rule first. One of the players was invisible in a tavern and they're like, hey, I know that taverns usually have secret rooms when there's shady things going on. Can I find a secret room? And I was like, all right, pull red or black to see if a secret room exists and whether or not you can find it. And it was like, all right, so they guessed correctly. The secret room exists, make a skill check to find it, and they wound up finding it. And it worked really well. So it's this fun idea of, all right, I had never planned for there to be a secret room in that tavern, but that tavern just became way more interesting. And it's fun. I like playing that way, and it takes, like I said earlier, it takes a lot of the stress off too, because it's like, all right, I'm just going to respond to this and ask y'all for your notes later.
So if somebody were to buy Ether, decide to do their own stream, what is one piece of advice that you would give them before they start?
Oh, don't try and remember all the rules. We have not even touched a quarter of the rules that are available in the book right now, and that's because as a game designer, you've heard this argument. You've heard the "I don't have the time to learn a new system" argument, and my take on that is you don't have time to learn a new system because you keep thinking you have to learn the system all at once, and you really don't. All you need to do to play Aether is understand how the core resolution works, and you can bullshit the rest. Like, that's the beauty of the game, and that's the nice thing about the I'm going to toot my own horn. It's a nice thing about the way I designed it is so much of it works off the same principle and the same kind of numbers that if you know how to make a skill check, you know how to make a defense check in combat. If you know how to make a skill check, you know how to go pick a number for, you know, how many cards an enemy should be able to play. If you know how to make a skill check, you know how to do pretty much all the math of the game. And 99% of learning new games that is daunting to people is, you know, remembering the math, remembering all the stuff that needs to be included. So, yeah, you don't have to remember everything. And then the other thing is, if you can't remember something and you feel like there should be a consequence, I created potential as a meta currency so that you could just say, I don't know what this should cost, so spend X number of points and we'll call it a day. It is literally your way of saying, all right, you're going to just lose a resource to do this and keep it easy. So, from a game runner perspective, don't worry about remembering all the rules. From a player perspective, Aether has a lot of options and it does its best to make sure that it narrows those options to what you want. So if you're going through character creation and you feel a little baffled, there are tables and tools available to help you narrow those choices down. I made it a classless system specifically so like once people are comfortable with it, they can go build exactly what they want. But I semi made it a class system as well by including collections of skills to narrow down your choices. So in that regard, just use the tables. The, uh, the tables are wonderful. They exist for a reason. They present a lot of information in very clear ways. And yeah, that's about it for players and GMs, I think.
Well, why don't you go ahead and plug where people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Eldritch Crow on Twitter. You can find me at eldritchcrow.com or my website and things. It's been a little bit slow for now. I have a little bit of merch up, you know, all that sort of thing. If you find me on Twitter, you can find a card link through all of that stuff. And you can find me at Eldritch Crow with 2 W's on Twitch. I tend to stream Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And Beacons airs every other Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. EST as well.
Hey, folks, do not go anywhere. I am going to put up these starting soon, and I'm going to go grab the other person that I am interviewing tonight and be right back. For those of you that do have to head out, go to rpghourstudios.card. That's card with 2 R's.co. You'll find all of our links. You can go to our Discord, talk with us in there. You can, it's a React Discord, so you react to things and you can get access to additional areas to talk to people from different shows. Um, and I'll be right back.